Hello, my name is Dzindzihasvili, and the topic of today's lecture is underrated openings. Well, when you talk about underrated openings, there are a lot of openings in chess today, and the way they progress, the way they change from day to day, actually, they become overrated and underrated. A lot of openings that been played a lot of times, they become overrated, and some openings that people don't play too much become underrated. And when we talk about underrated opening, I have to start with the opening that I put a lot of work in for decades, not for years, for decades, maybe for about 30 years. I did a lot of research. I played thousands of games, and I can easily say I have the best understanding of this opening, better understanding than anyone else in the world. So this opening, I will recommend you to play, and here is why. Not because it's best. This is the best opening. No, I don't. I said this is underrated opening because people don't play too much. But I don't want to talk at this opening the way and from being underrated, making it overrated. No, I'm not going to overrate. But here is one clear advantage of playing this opening. Playing this opening, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about chess. You learn a lot about strategy. You learn a lot about tactics. And this is kind of one of the very few openings that exist today where you can see almost everything. You see, it's a lot of different types of tactics and a lot of positional play, and it's very, very rich opening. You don't necessarily get clear and big advantage, no, but you're gonna get, I guarantee you, if you play it correctly, you're gonna get position that's easy for you to play. And you're gonna have an advantage over your opponent in playing this position. And it's well known that you much rather play a position, equal position, where you know exactly what you want to do, what your plan is, and you feel comfortable, than position with some advantage for you when you are not sure how to play and you can easily misplay. So now let's get on with the opening. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6. We can call it, I call it Scotch Gambit. This is Scotch opening, and this is Scotch Gambit. So I want to talk about this Scotch Gambit. So in the first part in this lecture, we are not going to go on with the main continuation. Now, this position is the main continuation of this opening. But here are other moves, including this move where black does not necessarily go d5. They may go knight g4 or knight e4. They also may go in this position d6, and they may go bishop c5, and they may go bishop b4 check. Now, in the first part, we're going to talk about those continuations, and in the second part, we're going to go to the main variation. This opening itself, it's so rich, but even with dedicating 2 lectures to it, we cannot exhaust all the possibilities by far. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to do, the way it's going to work is I will show you basic variations, basic ideas. And if you are interested enough to take it as your opening weapon, then you have to, I guess you're going to have to purchase my DVDs that dedicated to this opening, or try to get it from my book information, or maybe ask chess.com for me to make any more additional special lectures for it. And if demand is high, I'm sure we're going to do it. So now let's go on with with these continuations. After bishop c4, it's black's move. And let's go with knight f6, e5, and not d5. As I already mentioned, d5 is the main move we're going to discuss later in a second part. Best move in this position, besides d5, is knight g4 move. White has to be very precise to get playable position. For example, castling is a bad move, and not because black can take. Black cannot take this pawn because they're gonna lose a piece after f4. But castling is not good move because black goes d6 and easily gets very strong position. After ed, maybe queen takes d6, rook e1, bishop e7. White has nothing. Also, here after e5, knight g4, bishop takes f7 is not a great move because king takes, knight g5, king g8, and after queen takes g4, d6, black has very good position. This is all known in theory, and I don't want to dedicate too much time to it. So the correct move is to protect e5 pawn and at the same time to stop d6. So queen e2, that stops d6 move because white is going to capture with the check. And now white is threatening to go h3. Queen e7. Now we go bishop f4. Now this position is approximately equal, but white has very easy play. Black must do one of 2 things. They have to play either d6 or f6. And let's go with this moves. On d6 or f6, we take both either way. Queen takes, bishop takes, and now if bishop takes d6, this position considered by theory, and I believe white has some advantage. Knight a3, white easily gets their pawn back on d4 because they're threatening knight b5, and after a6, knight c4 may be very unpleasant for black. And later on, white is planning on castling long side, so the queen side. So white is going to have slightly better position. So as I said, I want to give you a quick overview, and I don't want to go in a complete details of every continuation. We cannot do that in one lecture. So anyone who is interested in details can get those details. So, and on f6, we do, if After bishop f4, black goes f6. We take on f6. Queen takes e2, bishop takes e2, knight takes f6. So now we can simply go knight d2 and knight b3. We're going to get slight advantage. We are not going to get big advantage in this position, and this is okay for white. Also, another option, interesting option, is bishop takes c7. I have played it several times, and I've gotten good position. It's double-edged. Bishop takes c7. If black tries to trap white's bishop on c7 by king d7 next move, then white has bishop b5, and after king d7, bishop goes to a5. White escapes with the bishop to d2 and will try to play against the weak pawns on d6 and d4. This is another option for white. Anyway, in this position, queen e7, knight g4 move is not played that often, but it's very possible continuation. Another continuation we should discuss is knight e4. And then we can go bishop d5. This is my suggestion. We can also play castle. Actually, theoretically, they say castle. But bishop d5 is okay. And after knight c5, I would just castle, knight e6. And we have to slowly try to get our pawn back. Knight d2, bishop e7, knight b3, castle. And now we don't take the pawn because we're going to lose the central pawn. So what we have to do, we are not in a rush to win d4 pawn. We have to play rook e1, protecting e5 pawn. d6, this position is slightly better for white. dc and knight takes d4. Now black has dilemma how to protect c6 pawn. D takes e is a very bad move because after knight takes c6, black is clearly in trouble. They must move the queen because taking white's queen loses a piece after in between check, and black loses a piece. So and after queen e8, they just simply lose a pawn for no compensation at all. So the correct continuation may be bishop d7, and then we can take on d6, go knight f5, and you see we're going to hit our piece is a lot better placed, and we're going to have some advantage. As I said, we're going to run through these variations quickly. And now let's look at some moves besides knight f6. There is a move bishop c5. Now, bishop c5 gets us to completely different opening. And I have my own suggestions there. It runs to completely different opening to gioco piano. We go c3, and let's go the gioco piano. This is very well known opening, and it's been played for over this more than a century. And in this position, they used to play only knight e7, which is still probably the most popular move, and in other continuations in knight a5, and after queen a4, knight c6. I was recommending on my DVDs knight e5 move. Well, it's still okay, but I think the best move is queen a3, because it forces black to play queen e7 as a best move. Queen takes, knight takes, castle, castle, and rook e1. This position, I can assure you, is a little better for white because white has better development and they can play knight e4 followed by knight c5. Well, let's see what will happen. Suppose black goes h6 and knight c5. Now it's difficult to develop bishop because of b7 pawn. And if black goes b6, then c6 pawn may become a target after knight e5. So this is something that you may try. I'm talking about queen a3 move in this position. Well, but as I mentioned already, the main move is knight e7, castle, castle, rook e1, c6. This position is very, very old position. And it's always been played either rook c1 or knight e5. My suggestion is knight e4 to quickly go with the knight on c5 and put pressure on b7 pawn. And if pawn moves on b6, then c6 pawn will become weak. So I'm sure this is slightly better for white. I've played many games, and analysis show not much of advantage, but a little advantage. After knight e4, suppose black goes knight b6. We continue knight c5. And on knight takes c4, just to show you one example of the game, queen takes c4, b6. I had this, and bishop e6. If this position happens, this is winning position for white, because after rook takes c6 and queen takes c6, white gets easily its exchange back because there is a devastating threat, knight f7, and on queen e8, white goes knight g5, and there is no good defense for black. Now, if h6, we can go knight f7 check. Also, there is queen takes e7 possibility, and white has an advantage. I don't want to go into details of it, but it's all double checked, triple checked, and approved, that even by Ribke approved, that this is nearly winning position for white. So that's my suggestion on move bishop c5 in this position, which leads to gioco piano. Well, move that we might have is also d6, knight takes d4, and knight f6. And black wants to conclude development with bishop e7 and castling. Now, I used to recommend knight c3, which I still like, castle, and after castling, knight takes c6 and bishop f4 with the idea e5, but then black goes knight d7. White has a little better position, but black has no weaknesses. I want to introduce another opportunity here. In this position, after d6, knight takes d4, knight f6. Another opportunity is this, and e5. And now black has two choices. The first one is d takes e, which is clearly not good for black because bishop takes f7. And now the best move for black is to play king takes f7. And after queen takes d8, bishop b4 check to get the queen back. Now we can play either bishop d2 or queen d2. Maybe queen d2 is a little better. Bishop takes d2, bishop takes d2. And then if bishop f5, we can go knight a3. You see, there's not much going in a middle game. Neither side is going to be under attack. But if you compare the pawn structures, you will see dramatic difference. Black has 5 pawn islands, white has 2, and most of black's pawns are targets and very weak. So this is not a good way to play for black. So what they should do, they should go knight d7 or queen e7. After knight d7, we can simply play ed, bishop takes d6, and maybe knight c3 now to have, again, advantage in pawn structure, or we can go e6, which also gives us slightly better pawn structure. Not that much of advantage, but also an option. Or queen e7 move is the other move. Then we should simply castle. And what we should do, we should just play this position with the pawn down. Black severely complicated castling option on the king side, and white can go rook e1. Next move, for example, on g6, we can go rook e1 and try for f4. We have more than enough for sacrificed pawn. And again, we are not going to go to complete analysis of it. And finally, bishop b4 check. Now, after bishop b4 check, c3, dc. This position is very well known. And the best move is castle, they say. It says in the books. Now, I am not questioning that castling is a good move, but I came up with very interesting observation. B takes C, if we capture. Now, let's see where the bishop goes. Now, this is also, I am proving that white has an advantage. Bishop e7 is probably the worst retreat for the bishop, because after queen d5, there is no good way to stop queen takes f7, because on knight h6, bishop would simply take. So bishop c5 is not that great, because white immediately gets his pawn back and will, when black cannot castle, white will clearly have an advantage. So the only option that makes sense that left is bishop a5, because bishop d6, really, it's very ugly looking move, stops development of a light square bishop. So after bishop a5, we castle. And now black has to finish development, and it's not very easy. So black can play knight f6, knight e7, or play d6 to prepare knight f6. So now let's start looking at these continuations. Knight f6 is a bad move because of e5, and after knight g4, we can simply go h3. And knight takes e5 will be very bad for black with the idea f4. Now, so let's try to play knight e7. Well, knight e7 is very bad as well, because white goes knight g5, attacking f7 pawn, and castling loses to queen h5, attacking h7 and f7, and black is lost. And after knight e5, white has very pleasant option here to simply take on f7 and go to much better position after queen h5 check, followed by queen takes a5. Now you see pawns are even, and black's king in the center. It's not very good. The other option for white to play here is bishop b3, that may even be stronger move. After h6, f4, and on hg, fe, and you see the terrible weakness of f7 pawn. And if black castles queen h5, and on g6, queen h6, that's very, very dangerous for black, because bishop takes g5 is coming, and black's position is totally lost. Knight cannot be moved because of queen takes g6 check. Black is lost here. So in this position, knight e7 is also bad. The best try is d6 to try to play knight f6 and hoping to finish development that way. Then we go queen b3, attacking f7 pawn, which can easily be defended by queen e7. That's when we play e5. If black takes this pawn on e5, they must take with a pawn, because taking with a knight, knight takes, and then queen a4 check, white will win black's bishop on a5. And if pawn takes, white develops very dangerous initiative, very strong attack. Bishop a3, queen f6, knight d2, and after knight e7, knight e4, and after queen g6, here is very powerful move for white. Well, rook e1 is okay, but very powerful move is bishop takes e7, and black is lost, because on queen takes e4, white will simply retreat, and now black can never castle. f7 is in jeopardy. Rook e1 is coming. It's a matter of a couple of moves before black will be absolutely destroyed. And if knight takes on e7, there is queen b5 check, followed by knight takes e5 and knight takes c6. There is variety of different moves that will completely destroy black. Knight g5 is another one, and after castle, knight f7, rook f7, knight takes e5. Black is completely busted. So that's what happens if black plays that way. That's what is awaiting for them. So that shows us that when we go bishop c4, the best move, well, bishop c5, either it transposes to gioco piano, it's playable move, and another playable move, knight f6, e5, d5, which leads us to the main variation. After bishop b5, knight e4, we will be talking about it in a second lecture. So positions that you get here, no matter what black plays, besides the main continuation, white gets very promising attack. Now, this is good. You're going to learn how correctly develop your pieces and quickly, and how perform your attack. You may get this position, you may get great attack, and you may not do well. That's why, but after the game, you're going to analyze You're going to try to find your mistakes, and that's how you're going to improve in these types of positions. I would say this is very, very interesting way to play, and you learn a lot. I will guarantee that. Another option here, for example, bishop e7. So, suppose black goes bishop e7. What can we do here? We can go knight takes d4, simply get our pawn back, and we have some space advantage. Or we will go c3 and try to take with a pawn on d4, because after d takes c, white gets an advantage. White goes queen d5, they win a piece, but it's temporary. It's temporary. White cannot keep this extra piece. Bishop takes h6 castle, and now white is going to lose his bishop on h6 because threatening c takes b, winning the rook on a1. And if bishop goes to c1, then knight b4, threatening queen and threatening knight c2 check. And after queen d1, c2 move. But one of the simplest continuations here for white is bishop takes g7, protecting b2 pawn. And after king takes g7, knight takes c3. And now just look at this position. Pawns are even, black's king is exposed, the white is ahead in development after the castle. Now, it's clearly not the position you want to have with black pieces. So now, if you learn, this is like a abbreviated report, kind of sketch of what is going to happen if black doesn't enter the main variation. I roughly introduced you to all different options for black besides main variation. Now, you should be satisfied in every case with the position you're going to get, and you should take it from there. It will clearly show you dynamics of chess attack, dynamics of chess play, and it's very helpful for general development of you as a chess player. And in the second lecture, we're going to be talking also about dynamics of different types of position, as well as very good positional play. Thank you very much, and have a fun playing this opening.